Now, we're talking in September 2015 to Martin Barre, and talking specifically about the album, it seems like you've gone further along your musical journey that started really back in the late 60s with the Penny Peeps. You might remember we played that in our first special when we featured your music. Now, you've described this album, Back to Steel, as the most important work in your career. Can you tell us why you think that?
This is more my songwriting. It's on the line, really. I've sort of dabbled with writing songs on the other solo albums, but it was always a lesser part of the whole, so it was more focused on instrumental. But this is the other way around, because from a practical point of view, I need to have songs that the band can play live. So it's really important to have good new material, but this is the point where the band's going to get an identity from having its own music. So that's the importance in it, and that's why there's a lot more songs.
Right. I mean, I have to say, it does feel like more like a proper band album, really. I think that's what you're saying. And I assume that you felt this when you were recording it. I mean, how did the process work? I mean, I presume you collect these songs over a period. You're on the road and maybe, I don't know, you work things out. But did you come to the studio with a clutch of songs and arrangement ideas, or how does it develop really over a period of time, Martin?
I like to be totally prepared when I'm in the studio, so that the pre-production, if you'd like to call it that, is really intense, and I probably did it in maybe 2 or 3 lumps where we went in the studio and did backing tracks and as a band we learnt them, but the writing was over about probably 3 months, and I was lucky enough I went to Mississippi to visit my son, and I was there for about a month, so I did a huge amount of writing there, and then we treated ourselves to a very long holiday in Thailand, and of course that I was playing my guitar every day. And again, I did a huge amount of work there, so it was great, and I really enjoyed being in a place where the phone doesn't ring, no distractions. You can just sit and write music. So a lot came out from there, and then I put it all together back home. So it was pretty well arranged and mapped out before we got into the studio, and of course I never dictate drum parts or bass parts, or even the vocal phrasing and melody. I like to give the guys a lot of freedom with that, and which they had, and they came up really, really well with parts. And this year I've got 2 girl singers who are on the new CD, and they're on the road with us, and that sort of adds a different element. And I just like to bring something new to the table every year. So if people are coming back to see us from a year ago, but it's very much a new show, and there's a lot to look at and to hear that's new and different.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that last time, Martin, and that's quite impressive, actually, because it keeps things fresh for both the audience and for yourself, doesn't it, really, going forward? Yeah. And you mentioned also there the use of female vocalists. Now, that, to me, harks back to albums like your very first solo album, Trick of Memory, and the great track called Suspicion, I think it was. So, that's always been there in the background, really. But was that a conscious decision then, really? You just wanted to change things around a bit and add something to the mix?
Well, I love writing vocal lines, even though I can't sing. I love doing harmonies, and so maybe I was being a bit excessive. I love doing that. So, but I've always enjoyed having layered vocals on songs, and the girls were just fantastic in the studio. That I hadn't met them before. And they just work so well together, and I like their voices so much that I gave them the track to do on their own. I just thought they deserved a bit more of a spotlight, so I think the last track we recorded was the one where they sing on it.
So Alex Hart and Eleni Andrea,
Yes.
where did you find these singers?
Well, at the same place that I found George Lindsay, the drummer, because we do our backing tracks at a studio in South Devon. So it's a sort of a big farmhouse with loads of space and big studio space. And it's a really cool place to go and work. And the engineers there, there's a couple of them. The guy I use, James Bragg, he has a lot of connections with local bands because they all go and record there. So he introduced me to George, recommended him as a drummer, and of course he was just magnificent. And then when I mentioned to him that I'd like to have a couple of girls singing on it, he knew exactly who I needed. So and they're all local, which makes it even better.
Great.
So these are two girls from Plymouth.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, we've commented in our review, actually, the album's really a summation of your influences, and in that sense it has a broad range. Did you ever think of homing in on one particular style and developing that? Is that something you might look at in the future? I mean, I think I'm really referring here to what I think is an absolute standout track, A Moment of Madness.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do like that track, and yeah, we really had a lot of fun doing that.
I'm sure you did, actually, yeah.
I'd hate to say yes. I probably ought to really narrow down what I do to a style and a sound and sort of recognisable foundation. But I've never done that. I've always gone every which way with the music, and I quite like having that diversity, the sort of contrast in there, sort of light and shade and the dynamics. I don't know if I could actually go away from doing that. I do really like to have lots of different things in there.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, really, but I'm sure you'll get feedback as you go out on the road again with the album. And if you play that live, it's immediately accessible, and it's actually very radio-friendly, and it's AOR, really. I mean, it's quite a surprise, I think, and it will perhaps surprise a few people, I think, on this album.
Yeah. Well, I'm pleased, and I think the feedback will tell me what I need to be doing. And it's fine, I'm as I said earlier, that I'm all for listening to people and taking notice. But particularly that track, we've been playing that live for the last 2-3 weeks, and of course people, when you play it now, the album's not quite out, but when we played them at these gigs, so people were just hearing them totally cold, but they really like them. And that was a really good feeling.
Now, you're out on the road in the UK for a few dates, Martin, this month, and people should check your website, and in fact that takes you into October, and I understand you might be going to the States before the end of the year.
Yeah, we as you say, we've got a few dates. We've got one in Scotland, but a few dotted around England, and then we go to Europe for the end of October, mainly Germany, a couple of days in France, a week off, and then we're in the States for 2 months.
Oh gosh!
And we do this cruise to the edge, which is a very funky cruise ship full of bands and.
Right. So you're floating.
We're floating. Yes. It's
very good.
Amazing.
But you have done that before, haven't you?
No, I've heard of it.
Oh right.
And I've always wanted to do it.
Yes.
And finally we are. But the other great thing about it, because trying to get American promoters to commit to getting us over there, and of course it's an enormous amount of work.
Yes.
The paperwork has been outrageous, but because we had the cruise, it changed everything. And so you can say, look, we're over there.
Yeah.
But what do you want to do about it? So off the back of the cruise, we've got a month tour up the East Coast, and then we'll be back the year in 2016 for another 2 tours, and then as well as that, we want to do big European and a big UK tour as well.
We're looking forward to seeing you again live. Thanks again, Martin. Always great to catch up with you, and all the very best for your future touring and any musical activities in the future as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. It's been a pleasure.